So I will start with our speakers from Preferred Media. Welcome to David Perks and Adam Keynes. We're delighted to have you along. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah, for the intro. As Sarah mentioned, an Australian organisation, so it's early evening for us. So I'll just say good day, and that should cover all of the time zones suitably. My name's David Perks. I'm the Chief Information Officer, CIO at Preferred Media. And Adam, who's on the call, who'll give you a wave, is our product manager for digital preservation platform. So we're going to cover off a little bit of what we do and how that affects procurement, a little demonstration of a key concept that we would like to see embraced in procurement, and then time for Q&A. So Preferred Media, we're on a mission. We aim to be the lowest friction and most sustainable preservation of memory partner with secure Australian sovereign facilities. So lowest friction because we have a very fast implementation cycle and a super fast and high throughput ingest. Most sustainable because we predominantly use LTO tape and have a fair amount of our power needs satisfied by our own solar generation and battery, and Australian sovereign because we're an Australian organisation and we hold all of our information in terms of preservation copies in Australian facilities, and so this is a quick look at our timeline. We've been around for a long time, over 40 years. The picture on the left is where we started under the arches of the Sydney Harbour Bridge as a physical preservation organisation. And that is not Adam's company car being delivered. That facility now is a luxury car sales room. And the picture on the right is our current facility where we've been operating for around 20 years from that facility, and it's a purpose-built physical digitization and digital hosting environment. The truck that you see there is a 40-foot container full of memories that are now safely housed in our physical preservation vault, and they have come to us for digitization and then digital preservation. And so one of the key things that's important to us as we go through procurement is volumetrics. There is a difference between a 40-foot container full of physical artifacts versus a terabyte of, or a few terabytes of born digital content. And so doesn't phase us what your volumetrics are. We're able to work from very small scale to very high scale, but it's always a good idea to be clear on your initial size of archive and growth rate of archive, or if it's an archive that is curated and items removed, the shrink rate of the archive. So volumetrics important to us. Having said that, because we're a tape-based technology, we have infinite capacity. Of course, we keep needing to buy tapes, but there's no threshold where you're going to need to buy infrastructure, you're going to need to buy a new network storage device, you're going to get bill shock through cloud storage, egress costs, or cloud storage storage costs. So from a procurement perspective, we are scalable as a technology provider from very small scale to extremely large. Now, our top tip in the preliminary sessions last week was to choose a platform that is truly open. The reason for that is that then you have an insurance policy for your procurement. And that insurance policy, by selecting a truly open platform, means that whatever happens in the future, you are able to evolve into it. None of us have a crystal ball where we can predict what's going to happen in the future. And so it's very important to procure with degrees of freedom that mean that you can continue to use the platform that you've procured, purchased, implemented, and populated, but that isn't the end of the story, that you've got options to do more than that. So what does that mean in practical terms? Well, this is Preferred Connection, and so this is our digital preservation platform, the platform that Adam and his team are responsible for, and it's got inherent capabilities, and they're the kinds of capabilities that you'd expect. So you can structure data, you can manage collections of unstructured assets. We have full visibility around fixity events. You can preview, access, download your access copies. You can restore your preservation copies. All of the things that you would typically look for in a core system for digital preservation of memory, permissions, sharing, granular access, and so on. And in the old world, that used to be the thing that you would procure. And then from the procurement stage onwards, you're locked in. You're locked into that platform, you're locked into that vendor, you're reliant on that roadmap, and the capabilities of the platform are the capabilities of your digital preservation strategy. And from a speaking CIO language, that's what we call a walled garden. Everything in the garden is rosy, smells beautiful, the flowers are blooming. But if you want a broader view, if you want to look outside, you can't. The walls are high and strong, and you're locked into that garden. Well, an open system changes that. So a comprehensive and complete API, a way of talking for systems to talk to each other. An open and complete API is the unlock. That is the key to being able to operate an ecosystem of solutions rather than being locked into a single solution. And once you unlock a solution, then the world really of possibilities is infinite for you. So in practice, what that means is that by unlocking the system and ensuring that your information, your assets, your archive is released from captivity, you can pull information from that system, you can do something with it, and then you can, if you choose to, push information back into that system based on what you just did. So that concept is a familiar concept around enterprise software and enterprise architecture, but there are very, very few platforms for digital preservation that have a comprehensive and open API. And when you're procuring, the kinds of questions to ask are, can I do everything through the API that I can do through the UI? Can I do everything through the API that I can do through the reporting module? Can I do everything through the API and more than an end user would be able to do? And you're looking for yes as the answer to those questions, and that is not reliant upon the provider's development team, but it's pre-baked, it's open, and any developer has the access and capability to be able to do that on your behalf. So in our little demonstration now, Adam was a developer from anywhere, and he's built a little application on this side of our ecosystem. And we're going to demonstrate a scenario. We're not saying that this scenario applies to any of you as an organization, but it's purely there to get you thinking, to show what's possible when you open a system. And in this case, we're opening our system to an artificial intelligence model in order to do something with the information that we're pulling out from it. So I'm going to let Adam take over the story from here and show you what that means. And again, this isn't saying that you need to have this use case or have this need. It's just an example of one thing that's possible. So Adam, we'll give you the floor and let's have a look at doing something with some information that you pull out of preferred connection.
All right, thank you. So let me just share my screen. So hopefully you should be able to see that now.
Yeah.
So what we have here is this is a live version of our preferred connection. So to take you through, what I've done is I've ingested a number of files, just images and videos in this case. They've been through our ingest process, including things like fixity checks and our chain of custody events that we have as part of an ingest service for our clients. As David alluded, they can access these assets through our system. They could enhance metadata and other different types of information against here, as well as request restores and things such as that. As you can see here, the file is very empty of information. So, you know, that the image title is completely nondescript. There's no description. There's no tags associated to it. So the metadata is very limited. There's not much at all apart from basic information. So from an API perspective, what I did was I took a view of how could we use our API to enhance the metadata as a simple example. So what I did was build a very simple asset browser. So this is just using a tool called Flutterflow, which is an off-the-shelf AI tool that you can build apps with. So I'm a non-coder, so this is limited code or low-code approach to building something. And what I've done is I've called our API and I've called our API to get the list and the imagery and the title, description, tags for all of our different assets that are in preferred connection. So this is that list that's presented here as a grid that you can go through. And then I've selected one here, in this case, a picture of this wolf. And what I've then done is I've built an API connection out to OpenAI. So what this will do is when I click Enhance Metadata, it'll take a preloaded prompt that I've written, send it out to OpenAI with the image URL, and then try to send back a suggested title, description, and some tags for that image. So I'm going to pray to the demo gods that this works live. The call might take a few seconds as I have only just started up the browser, but here we go, worked well. So what it's done is it's looked at that, it's sent back a suggested title, description, and tags here. So, you know, I could potentially edit those or say I'm not happy with them and try and run it again until I get a response that I'm happy with. But in this case, I'm quite happy with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that data back into my preservation system. So I'm going to press this button, which will update data. So that's then calling a put API into our solution to insert that data into the database. So that's confirmed. So if I go back to preferred connection, you should now see updated title, description has been added, and here's some tags as well. So with, I guess, an open system, you could very simply build an app around it, gather information, enhance that information, and store that information as well. So the prompt I've used here is very simple. I've only specifically asked it for a title, description, and tags. I did a little bit more playing around with ChatGPT and did a very comprehensive prompt just to demonstrate what you could potentially get back from it. So this is where I've given it the persona of an image expert and metadata specialist. and asked it to go through and cover every single dimension that would be potentially useful against an image. I've then given it the same URL of that image. And then this is the response that it gave. So very comprehensive around, estimating the types of camera that was used, aperture, shutter speed, iOS, in comparison to the actual metrics here is very close, if not correct as well, which is quite impressive. All different types of information around lighting, optics, composition, potentially, where it may be as well in the world based on some environment information about the subject. So you can see all different types of information that you can do. And this was just a single prompt, so you can continue to interrogate. So there's a lot that you can potentially utilize a solution that has an API and using other tools to build apps, connects to language models that may be able to help you enhance or do other things with different preservation material that you might have, such as images, documents, and videos in this example. David, I'll hand you over back to you.
Thank you. You'll just need to stop sharing if you haven't already, Adam, at the top. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully I'm back with a recap slide there of what we just shown. So as I mentioned, of course, we're not proposing that you would enhance metadata, use an AI model, but we do expect that that will be part of the future of archiving, not necessarily with a public model, but potentially with your own learning model that you've trained with your data. And that then leads to very high levels of precision and localization. But what we do anticipate is a wealth of other reasons why you would need an ecosystem. And so historically, a lot of archives have become dark archives because yes, there's preservation. Yes, those archives are well curated, but the access to them is extremely limited, and therefore the use of them is extremely narrow. An open system opens your archive to be an available archive, an open archive, participate in a community of archives. And to do that, you're going to definitely encounter needs for publication, syndication, potentially monetization. Definitely all of our customers struggle with prioritization and particularly, being ready to ingest. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Collaboration, analysis and valuation, continuous improvement of the archive, and reduce lead time to ingest. So, albeit that you wouldn't necessarily do exactly what Adam demonstrated there, having an open system, having an API, being able to continuously improve your archive can significantly change your workflows and remove your bottlenecks. So, if you don't have good metadata and your prior disposition would be to, search and find and enhance prior to ingest, an open system can flip that and ingest. The artifacts are then preserved and enhance them in situ. And so that then reduces your lead time for ingest. And because we're a cloud platform delivered through a browser with an API, your lead time for ingest is measured in days from contract signing. And so there's no need to go through, there's no equipment that you need to install. There's no provisioning that you need to do. We create your users, we set up your metadata schemas the way that you would like those to be set. And from that point on, you're ready to ingest. And because ingest with this approach is not once and done, it's not a one-shot deal, then your ingested materials can be enhanced, continuously as enhancement technology becomes available, becomes affordable, becomes practical. So we encourage you to think about your ecosystem. Excuse me, I just jumped one slide. And in procurement, we really welcome a conversation about what's that ecosystem look like? What other systems, collection management systems, web portals, internal collaboration platforms, partners and partner infrastructure, so major donors of materials or major consumers of materials. What's your ecosystem look like? And what do you expect it to evolve towards? And what's your vision for your archive? So our disposition to procurement is make sure that your core system does everything that, does the basics that you need, and then embrace an ecosystem approach that leaves all of your options open to innovate around the edge of that core system. And that innovation, the core system is a long-term decision. There's no question about that. But the opportunity to innovate in days and hours, as Adam did with his little demo application, means that you're not locked in. Your ecosystem can be quite dynamic and progress as your needs evolve and as the market brings new preservation technologies and new preservation opportunities, new platforms, new distribution channels that you would like to take advantage of. With an open system, you are not beholden to one vendor to take advantage of that. So I'm going to leave the last word before questions to Arfan Zubri, who's an experienced thought leader in archiving museums. And his views are quite aligned to the views of Preferred Media. And this is the comment from Ifran that I'd like to draw out. Looking ahead, the next generation of archives will increasingly integrate AI, big data, analytics, immersive media, digital heritage platforms. In that sense, archivists will need to operate across disciplines. Now, you can read just as well as I can, but the implications of that observation are that the digital preservation platforms and methods of the past, what got us here is not going to take us where we are going, very rapidly in the future. And so our message really is procure with the future in mind and make sure that you've got the basics that are required for present day preservation. So I'm going to turn it over there to questions. I'm not sure how we're going for time there, Sarah, but hopefully we haven't used too much and we've got some time for questions.
I think that means it's over to me, guys. Thank you very much for that. Can I ask everyone just to give our speakers a brief round of applause? I know it's silent, but it's the visuals that count, isn't it? So thanks very much for that and for getting things going in such good form. I haven't seen any questions pop up in the chat, so I'd encourage people, if you've been having some thoughts, to pop something in now and we can try and pick those up. But I'll just try and get the ball rolling with a few things that hopefully will be fairly straightforward and painless to answer. I think you talked about what organizations can do to help ensure a sort of a smooth procurement with you, but I'll perhaps come back to that in a minute. But do you have a sense of how long the typical procurement process takes for people working with you? It's a bit of a piece of string question, but is it sort of like, well, yeah, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I might start with a slightly glib answer, Michael, and say too long. And then, the reason for that is because it's approached as a life or death procurement decision. And what I'm hopefully, conveying is that so long as you buy a platform that is truly open, it isn't a life or death decision. So long as that platform can do all of the things that you would expect of a preservation platform, the bells, the whistles, the the sizzle on the sausage, that hopefully is there as well. But if it isn't, well, okay, it can be delivered in a different way. It can be delivered in a different way. And what's, a shiny new capability today is tomorrow's old news. And that's why I think, it's a mistake to put yourself in a situation where you're locked into one vendor for an extreme, period of time. So because we're talking about long-term preservation, we're talking about extreme periods of time. Long implementation cycles add to that decision anxiety. Our implementation cycle is immediate. You can sign a contract with us today, you can have your platform tomorrow. And so those things can reduce, the amount of work that has to happen in procurement and pre-procurement, because we're very easy to onboard to. Let's look at the other end of the scale. We have no egress fees, and so we're very easy to offboard from as well if the worst case happens. And so when I look at my own procurements, I'm always most interested in how many degrees of freedom I am buying and how many degrees of freedom I am sacrificing for the platform that I'm procuring. And I'm interested in the platforms where I'm procuring the greatest number of freedoms for my future strategy versus locking in. That's a long answer to your short question, Michael.
No, thanks for that, David. And so from that, and perhaps a couple of other remarks you made during the presentation, one question I have is about, have you noticed any sort of common pitfalls in procurement with the customers you have worked with? But I'm just kind of second guessing that it might be that people are looking to solve an immediate problem rather than thinking ahead about the potential. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's some of it. And then, trying to solve everything, before the procurement. So, I might say, I'm not saying that you shouldn't think very hard about your procurement, be very, precise about what your needs are. That's important. But sometimes, the signal gets lost in the noise. And the procurement slows down because of what we call edge cases. Oh, well, how do you handle this? Well, how often does that happen? Oh, well, it hasn't happened, but how would you handle it if it happened? Well, why are we talking about that? If it happened, we have an open system, we can handle it. But given that it hasn't, let's not get distracted. So, I think those are the pitfalls, is trying to think of all of the contingencies at a micro level without having a macro contingency, which is if this core system can't do that thing, we can plug in something else that can. And we can do that extremely quickly and, without a lot of cost.
Okay, got it. The chat is still very quiet. I encourage people, if whatever time of day, to sort of chip in, because this will be your best chance to talk to preferred media. So one of the things you said early on about procurement was you said kind of it doesn't really matter sort of how many terabytes, petabytes of data people have got. They come to you. Does it make a difference? Are there other factors that come into play there? Things like I'm thinking like the sheer number of files. I might have a small, it might only be a few terabytes, but if it's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of tiny text documents, emails, government records that have been scanned or something, Does that create any issues, or very large AV files that might be sort of hundreds of gigabytes each? Did you have to think about those factors as well?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Michael. So those norms around what your archive looks like or what your collection looks like, they are important. And so we've got clients who've got small volume, but that volume is a small number of gigantic files, as you alluded to. So, high fidelity video and audio. And that causes some particular nuances because a single file will span multiple tapes in our LTO technology. Well, okay, that's interesting. Good to know. It affects how many tapes we need to buy, but because of the efficiency of storing large files on tape versus small files on tape, but it doesn't mean that the client needs to be concerned about it. So it's good for us to know. We've got the other extreme where we've got clients who've got, as you mentioned, extremely small files, but hundreds of thousands of them, and of course that creates a big catalog, but with a relatively small volume of information sitting behind that big catalog. So yeah, that affects the way that the user interface should be designed and the way that the API paging works to serve that back, gradually rather than overwhelming, the receiving computer with a huge amount of volume. But yeah, that's a consideration. So it's always good to talk about that up front. But again, it might change. If you approach something that's kind of entirely based upon your current state, and then there's a major donation to your archive, you don't want to have to turn that away because it's a different size and shape to the volumetrics that you procured against. You also don't want to have to go out and buy new infrastructure when that happens and have a cost associated with taking that bequest or taking that donation of artifacts. So again, this is one of those degrees of freedom. Good to know, not career limiting if things change.
Thanks for that, David. Sam has put a comment in the chat that I'm going to read out for the benefit of the tape. It sounds like Epstein files or something like that, doesn't it? So she's saying it's not a question, just a comment. It's pleasing to see the focus on sustainability and the use of renewable energy, especially right now. And the one thing you have in Australia is sunshine, which is good and very envious. But I guess that is a good thing, and perhaps you want to say a little bit more about that. But also a kind of follow-on related to procurement, I guess, would be: are you able to report back on the sort of carbon footprint and the environmental impact of what you're doing? Because I know a lot of archives now either are required or like to report back on the sort of the greenness of what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, Sam, thanks for the comment and the recognition, because it's not easy to run petabytes on solar. But yeah, I should have mentioned when I was talking about that up front that when it comes to evaluation of your procurement, we will do better in an evaluation that is looking at total cost of a solution on a triple bottom line type basis, or an environmental and financial basis. Not that the financial side won't look attractive, but the light touch on the environment is something that the hyperscalers do through carbon credits and other greenwashing that we do through our own inherent solar and tape technology. So when you're evaluating, and increasingly we are seeing procurements that are evaluating environmental impact and social impact with equal weighting to financial cost. And so, that if you're that kind of organization where environmental impact and the lowest impact on the environment is important, then we're a provider that we would like to have that conversation with you. Similarly, from a sovereign standpoint, if you're an organization that has a high First Nation, Indigenous, or you mentioned previously, Michael, some, particular types of records like health records or, personally identifiable information, then that's going to weigh heavily in your decision-making process. And again, the big players, if you're thinking of using cloud storage, then those are not Australian sovereign. They're Australian jurisdiction, but they're not Australian sovereign. So another big decision, or a big procurement perspective to have.
Okay, so I'm slightly conscious of time, and thank you for all that. But I just had one related question there. So, do you work with customers in other jurisdictions? So, like if you've got an EU customer and their data's got to stay within the EU sovereign region or whatever, can you support their activities as well?
Yeah, we can, and too early to talk about some of the work that we're doing here, but we will be expanding our capabilities to be sovereign in other areas. So more news to come on that, but we can support today. But the converse would be true. We would have jurisdiction in other areas, but Australian sovereignty, which is a friendly sovereignty to be working under. So, it's just a simple fact that lots of places can't get sovereign storage. So, Pacific Islands, New Zealand, just proximal to us, they don't have sovereign options, and so we're a good option for those types of organizations too.
All right. Well, thanks, David. I see Sarah's lit up, so I better pass back to her before I get into trouble. But thanks very much, David and Adam, for that. That's been brilliant.